Welcome, welcome. Jamie Hernandez here, founder of Breakthrough Yoga Coaching Method, helping you bridge a gap between your spiritual practice and your business. So today's topic is titled The Privilege of Being a Creative. Now, a creative is someone who creates their life, an entrepreneur, a coach, a healer, a writer, a painter, a dancer, somebody who is intentionally creating their life. So I believe that's everyone, but most people in our community are coaches or healers and are also somewhat artistic in their own manner. And so one thing that we want to start to recognize about this privilege is that most likely we are not in physical survival mode. Meaning to say, we have a roof over our head, we have something to eat, we are not in constant danger around us in our environment. So that in itself is a privilege, just to have that safety. Now, it's not to say that we are never in survival mode, because we all know, if you've been in the healing, world for a long time now, you understand that there are moments in your day that you are in survival mode due to past trauma, due to past experiences, and what kind of evokes them or allows them to emerge is your day-to-day survival. Meaning, like, if you're driving, you kind of have to make sure you stay alive. If you're crossing the street, if you're trying to feed your kids, if you're trying to get your work done, things like that. So that allows whatever survival mode instincts that are still there into our consciousness. So here's the thing. We, the fact that we can spend time creating our life, right? We can do that in these moments, this time, this space that we have to do what we're doing to create our life, to create our business. And we also, if we were in extreme survival mode, there is a possibility of transcending. And one very big example of that is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Man's Search for Meaning. It's a very well-known book by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning, in 1946, and is chronicled his experience as a prisoner in the Nazi concentration camps during the World War II. I'm reading the description here, and describing his psychotherapeutic method, which involved identifying the purpose of each person's life. So here's an example of extreme survival mode, and yet we can transcend. And my point is, wherever we are, right? We all experiencing survival mode, right? But when we are have the ability to actually be outside of survival mode, in thriving mode, there is a privilege, there is a divinity that starts to happen. And the antidote for both, whether you're in survival mode more from an emotional standpoint, a physiological standpoint, or you're literally in survival mode, I believe the antidotes are the same. So let me kind of outline the three ways that Viktor Frankl talks about, and I'll kind of relate it to how we work with our clients as well. Number one, completion of tasks. So one of the things that we do with our clients is that we get our clients to get really crystal clear on what their top values are in life. And for example, a lot of my clients who have children, they're like, I want to be a really good dad. I want to be a really good mom, right? That's one of their top goals or the top priorities. If you're in business, you might have a certain income goal that will support a lifestyle so that you can travel more, so that you can take more trainings with certain teachers. It starts just the tool of having more money in the bank will help you further along your life's mission, but also further along your experience here on earth. And so his first point, Viktor Frankl, completion of tasks, is because the completions of our tasks want to be related to our top priorities. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client and she's a figurative artist. Okay. So here she was, it's not like just this hobby. Like she literally, she's on the board of like all these big like art directing type of things. She makes these massive like figurative paintings. Figurative paintings are something like when you paint something that is of real life. This is her real expertise. And that was her dream, to be a figurative artist. But the thing she was doing was she was working in her parents' glasses store. She was doing graphic design work. She was doing copywriting and editing. She was doing some like these small fairs, doing these small like cards. And here's what happens. When you are on survival mode, one of the symptoms is you will do something very similar to your gift or your craft, but it looks close to it, but it's not exactly what you want. Like her dream really was to really solely be an artist and sell her paintings at the prices that they deserve, So the 4-figure investments for these huge, massive paintings that she would spend like hours and hours on, right? And months. So what was happening was her survival mode, her need to take care of herself, her need to, pay the bills, her need to also have the approval of the external was meeting her emotional survival mode. And so she unconsciously was in survival mode. And one of her top goals was like, well, I want to be a better mom, but I'm doing all of this stuff. And then by the time I kind of reach my family, I'm actually burnt out. I'm exhausted. So her tasks were not in line with her top goals, meaning to say, I want to be a figurative artist painter. So when was she doing that task? After everything was done at the end of the day. So her tasks were not aligned, right? Were not in priority with her goals. And so the two goals of being a better mom and a goal of like being a figurative artist were literally coming last. So let me know in the comments if that ever happens to you, because her survival mode was in play and unconsciously taking over the tasks that she felt she needed to do. I need to pay the bills. I need to kind of have the approval of my parents. I need to make sure I'm people please and make sure everyone is okay except for me. Like that, and that comes from a deep trauma. When you're in that need to make sure that everyone else around you is okay, it's most likely because there was a traumatic experience in your life where, okay, if you didn't, for example, if you had, in my case, like an alcoholic father, I would need to make sure that everyone else was okay before I was okay. Make sure that, I put myself and them in like a certain environment where I had my safety. So the tasks started to become related to survival. So the task, number one, Viktor Frankl, is we want to start to now align the tasks with our top priorities. So if your top priority is healing with your clients, or your top priority is writing a book, your top priority is some kind of creative form, the thing that you're here meant to do, then that should be on the top. Okay, and I go a little bit more deeper into strategy, into business strategy about that, but that should be the first thing, wherever, whatever you are, if you're a night owl, if you're a morning person, if you're an afternoon person, like that should be the first thing on your list. So I think that's what he means, completion of tasks, okay? Number two, he talks about caring for another person. Now, as a healer and as a coach, we all know we can take our own medicine, we can do all the healing, we have so much, we know so many things, right? And that's important, but when all we do is take the healing and take our own medicine over and over again and we kind of just give it to ourselves, something happens. And when we start to share that gift, we all know, and let me know in the comments, we all know that that's extremely fulfilling. And I believe on a deep spiritual level, it's because we are starting to see the other as ourselves, right? Because what is a spiritual practice always teaching us? We are actually one consciousness living in these kind of fragmented human bodies. So there's something that happens when you offer your gift to the collective, because now all of a sudden the whole purpose of becoming a fragmented human being, so that you can see many perspectives, is to give back into the whole, into the one. Yeah, let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so Viktor Frankl's caring for another person. Okay, all of these things are to understand, these are going to be our longevity as a creative. Because when you're a creative, sometimes what happens is we start to feel guilty, or we start to feel like this is not practical. And so we start to lose like the meaning of why we're doing what we're doing. And that's his last point, finding meaning by facing suffering with dignity. Now, when you're going through your life, like, I'll give you an example. As a healer and a coach, if you are a healer or a coach, you kind of know that you've done this because you've had your own personal experience. We have all had our own personal experience. And for me, it's, I've always suffered from like major anxiety attacks, insomnia. Like that was it. When I'm highly, let's say in a highly, what's the word? State of imbalance, that's what happens. And of course, that suffering, if I don't face it with dignity, what happens is I become a victim. I fall into the victim spiral, and I'm like, why me? And then as you start to move towards it with dignity, you start to realize, wow, okay, what a privilege it is to have the ability to now experience this, because now I know how to bring somebody else through it, right? My suffering, as I face it with dignity, and I'm not saying that that's always how I faced it, but as I started to face it with dignity, started to allow, welcome it in, and start to see it as a gift that is being given to me through suffering, then I start to realize, because I've gone into the depths of this, chronic pain and anxiety, I can help other people through it, and I have a process, right? So identifying a purpose to each person's life through these 3 stages, okay? Now, whether you are, in survival mode, in extreme survival mode, like I mentioned at the beginning, or you are more in survival mode just because your day-to-day is allowing that to merge, I believe the antidotes are the same. Now, what starts to happen as well is we also, there's survival and there's soul mode. There's also this is a duality, right? We experience duality here on earth. There is also the battle between evil and light. We see that. There's a polarization here on earth. We are seeing it all around us. And here's the thing about that duality, that if we only see it, right, and we see it from a place of fear only, what it becomes is it becomes a divergent from our divinity. So what does that mean? Okay, I'll read you an example, a definition. Divinity is the ability to transcend and perceive human limitations, not to survive, but to become more than the limitations that we perceive, even if their limitations are not even real. Okay, so the ability to transcend and perceive human limitations, not just to survive, but to become more than the limitations that we perceive, even if those perceptions are not even real. So when we shift out of survival mode into creation, we all know this. We also receive like a download. Let me know in the comments if this is true for you. We receive downloads. And so we find these moments and these places of transcendence. We find these moments and places of transcending out of the survival mode into a place where all of a sudden we're channeling more than just our human kind of intellect, more than just our survival, more than sometimes a lot of people talk about, when I have created something, it doesn't just come from me, right? It came from something more than me, right? So that divinity starts to come through us. And what a privilege that is, because here it is. Here's why this is a privilege. Okay? Let me read you, hopefully this will make sense to you guys. I'm going to read you a quote from Buckminster Fuller. He said, "We will never change the world by fighting against the things you don't like. You don't like. World, you will find a new way you will find a new way. What you will do is you'll find a new way that makes the old way obsolete. And then people will follow the new way, and in the old way collapses." So this is the deeper meaning of creativity. Because when we are divergent into fear, into survival, into the battle between good and evil, it creates this veil of fear that is creating a veil over our divinity. And what did I say divinity was? It's the ability to transcend, perceive human limitations, not just to survive, but to become more than our limitations. And so when we are met with the transcendence of more than our limitations, then we come from a place where we start to create a world that we want to see. Does this make sense to you guys? Okay, I know it's like kind of a big topic and I'm trying to take big concepts here, but it's like the privilege of being a creative is all of a sudden we start to understand the body temple. We start to understand the gift it is to have a 3D body here on earth, because that is a tuning fork and allows ourselves to be a vessel of creativity, which means a vessel of change. It means a vessel which can perceive farther and transcend human limitations, just like Viktor Frankl did in the Nazi concentration camp. Right? And then he became this creative vessel of understanding life's purpose, human life's purpose. He became a channel for understanding those three things, and continue to spread that limitation. Because any human being, if you told them tomorrow you're going to be in a Nazi concentration camp, most likely the survival mode is going to kick into high gear, and you are, that creativity and the veil of fear is going to veil your divinity. But he's showing us that we can actually transcend that survival mode, whether it's physical survival mode or whether it's emotional survival mode, through his 3 points. And in his 3 points, it starts to kind of bring you to the antidote to shift out of survival mode into divinity. And where we start to move into divinity, we start to move into creativity. And that creativity starts to transcend our human limitations, and it gives creative solutions, right, to make the old ways that are not serving us, this good and evil battle, obsolete. So I hope this is making sense, because here's the thing, here's the rabbit hole that a lot of us will go down. We want to create our life. We have a gift to the world. We have something that is divinely coming through us. And because of our old patterning, because of our old trauma, because of our old kind of voices that are not even ours, start to come in and put us in survival mode. So in survival mode, again, it veils the divinity, and it's very hard for us to function. So we most of us, we can start to get overwhelmed, and then our tasks do not match our top priorities, that the gift, the mission we're here to do on earth. Let me know if that's making sense. Do you see? And so we kind of go when we get into this divergent, instead of taking the medicine, taking your own medicine, and following these 3 points. I'm going to repeat them again. Completion of tasks, caring for another, and finding meaning by facing suffering with dignity, right? When we take those 3 points and we shift out of survival mode into creative mode, it's not just creation that happens for ourselves. We start to affect the whole and the collective. Because here's the thing, sometimes we don't realize, like, let's say, for example, you're a figurative artist. The act of seeing beauty, okay, and this is an actual, there's been research on this, and you know this, the act of seeing beauty, whether it's in art, whether it's in movement, whether it's in a voice, whether it's in a moment, the act of feeling and seeing beauty and awe changes your state of consciousness. So you know, if you are in the present moment, and I'm looking outside right now and I'm looking at these clouds. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see it. And like I'm seeing this like breathtaking light coming through these clouds, right? It literally starts to change my state of being, thus my state of consciousness. So do not discount the beauty that you bring into the world, because it starts to elevate your consciousness and the consciousness of others. Do you see now? Are you guys starting to get this? Let me know in the comments. I don't always get them at the beginning, but I want to see them because I want to know if this is actually resonating with you. And I'm going to repeat Buckminster Fuller's quote here. We will never change the world by fighting against the things you don't like. The world you will find, I was doing a Google thingy, so it didn't translate exactly, but find a new way that makes the old way obsolete, and then people will follow the new way and the old way collapses. So by us moving into our creativity, that's the new way. And all of us coaches and all of us healers have our own unique new way. Just because you are a healer or a coach or whatever it is you do, an artist, there's thousands and millions of artists on this earth. But guess what? They're all doing it in their own unique way and affecting those around us. So when my client, for example, started to shift out of survival mode, she started to, and her tasks were all related to like people pleasing her parents, trying to just survive, the day by kind of doing her graphic design copy work, pleasing her bosses, into actually moving into, what she loved. Guess what she had more time for? Her child and her husband. Her whole relationship changed. And then she had more time to actually give back to the community. She likes to work with the youth in the community, right? And she had more time to offer her services, her beauty, in a way that was unique and new for her. So it started with her, inside of her, then into her family, and then into her community. And then it started to shift the collective consciousness around her. And that's the thing I don't think we sometimes realize, just by being our gift and offering our gift, how it shifts the collective. And we will never know that power. I go live like free every week. And when we were in lockdown, I went live almost every day teaching. I honestly did it for myself because I'm like, I am going to go insane if I don't wake up and change and have a purpose, right? And do what I love and take my own medicine, because when I take my own medicine and I share it, there's something very fulfilling about that. And the people, the one person that reached out to me said to me, was having suicidal thoughts, and I tuned in every day. I don't even know this person. This is somebody who told me that there's a friend who didn't want to reveal his what do you call it, identity. And your classes saved like me, you know. And I'm not going to take credit for that. That person did their work, right? But it's like sometimes we if we're in survival mode and all I was doing was thinking, oh my God, well, I'm not getting paid for this shit. Like, right? Do you see how the survival veils our humanness? It veils our divinity. But I'll tell you, every time I did that practice, and every time I do this practice, where I practice now, there is an unveiling, and the divinity comes through me, through that unique and new perspective and offering that is only unique to me. So I teach yoga. There's millions of yoga teachers, but that opens the channel so that creativity and divinity can come through me. Does this make sense? I want to hear your comments. I wish I could talk to you guys personally, like, if this makes sense. And so this is the deeper meaning, guys. And this is your longevity. When you start to think, and from that very kind of black and white survival mode place, where you're not seeing the immediate results, where you're not tuning into finding meaning in the face of suffering, when you're not tuning into caring for another person, when you're not basing your tasks on your zone of genius, your gift, your mission here on earth, then we just start to kind of see, well, I'm not making the money, and I'm not saying it's bad to make money. And I teach all our clients how to raise their prices and how to kind of have a different energy and relationship around money. But if we are only going from that, right, from that place, like I have a client who, their client was about to give them, a lot of money, and then they kind of, then they changed their mind, and then he was a little bit upset, but it's like, you just created an opportunity for yourself that can be recreated again. Do you see that? Do you see that potential and how that is going to affect your family? That's going to affect, what you're trying to do here on earth, right? So once we start to understand that fear that veils our divinity, and we want to learn how to move out of survival mode into soul, and I talk about this a lot. I even have a whole training on moving out of survival to soul, and that's what we do with our clients, is understand the parts of us that will always be in survival mode, and the soul that is the one that wants to lead your life. And the soul always knows the bigger picture. So if we're just kind of survival, like, oh my God, we didn't make the money, right? It's like, but the soul is constantly, what's the word? Inviting you. It's kind of whispering. It's kind of like you're hearing it. And when you start to listen to that, right? So much more will come to you. Because here's the thing about intuition. We can't know right away what the outcome is, and that's like our mind kind of that wants that certainty. But we all know when we've listened to a little hunch, we've gone on that trip that we thought we shouldn't go on, or we took that training that we didn't think like we could afford, or we met that client in that deep kind of level of trauma that we thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this, right? Something happened. We created a new way so that the old way became obsolete. Does this make sense? Right? So this what I talk about, our divinity, our ability to transcend our human limitations, is a privilege. Because what that privilege does is it gives back to you, it gives back to your family if you have one, or your friends, and it gives back to the collective, and the collective is you. Right? We're all humans are all self-centered by nature. So if we kind of at least understand, well, okay, if I do this for the for the whole, I'm actually doing it for myself. And I guess we're designed that way, because if we weren't self-centered, then we wouldn't necessarily start with finding it in ourselves, which is an important step, because you can't really help other people if you haven't helped yourself, right? So let me see. All right. So this is the privilege of being creative. And I think when we can tune into this and tune into the antidote and tune into it on a daily basis, we get out of the small little mind, and we start to tune and tap into the all, tap into the greater of it all. And that's what creates our longevity as a creative entrepreneur, as a coach, as a healer, whatever gift or whatever mission you have here on earth. Okay, so I'm going to recap. We have the first privilege we have to understand is that we're not in physical. If we're creative, most of us, okay, if you're listening to this on your phone, you are not in immediate danger, okay? And so, meaning to say you don't have, you have food to eat, you have a house, you have a phone. Now, of course, if you're in abusive relationship, that's a different story. But we have the privilege of just having that time and space without feeling like we're in danger. I said at the beginning, doesn't mean that we're never in survival mode on an emotional basis, or again, if it's an abuse relationship, that's a different story. But we can still be in that survival mode. I talked about that, right? Based on our old trauma. And if you were to work with me, that's the very first place we're going to start, right? Is where in your body, your mind, and your energy is that imprinted, that is kind of like, even though you intellectually know you're worthy, you're enough, you're capable, you belong, there's something always kind of like, one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake, okay? And that comes from deep core wounds that we're going to start to look at on the very first call that we have together, the very first breakthrough call, which is free, okay? And then I talked about, Viktor Frankl's way of identifying a purpose for each person's life, completion of tasks, again, and what I say is base it on your top priorities, your top values, caring for another person. So we want to take our own medicine, but it's also very fulfilling. There's something that happens. There's an energetic expansion when we share it with others. And he was talking about meaning by facing suffering with dignity. So not spiraling into our own victimhood and overwhelm when we think we can't get it together, okay? There is always meaning in our suffering. And that's kind of the dualistic nature here on earth. If we rise up almost from a soul bird's eye view, whenever we start to see things from a bigger picture, there's always something greater that's happening. And we'll never know all of it, right? But we all know, and in my case, my deep anxiety and suffering has given me the gift of being able to help other people through it. And without a doubt, there's a certainty level, because when you bring yourself through such suffering, there's a level of certainty that you can start to center in when you help other people, because your certainty as a coach, as a healer, helps other people find their certainty when they feel lost in the chaos. Okay? And I talked about how um, the divinity, right? Divinity comes through us. What is divinity? It's the transcendent of our own human limitations. So when we move out of survival mode into soul mode, which is I call it, right? The divinity creation can literally move through us. What a gift that is, right? Because what happens is it literally becomes a gift, right? We don't necessarily, based on our kind of old patterns, sometimes see it as a gift, but it starts to see the beauty of our own newness, right? Changes the state of our own consciousness. Yeah. So when we do that, then we affect the whole, then we affect the collective. This is why it's so important to understand what a privilege it is to stay in creativity. Because when we stay in creativity, what happens is we start to find new ways to make the old ways obsolete. Okay, you know this in your own healing work with your clients. There is a magic thing that happens when you are together with your clients, that there's like something that happens that clicks between you and your client, and all of a sudden the old ways become obsolete because you're practicing something new that clicked between the two of you that you both didn't realize. And I find that also often happens where we understand what we're teaching, but because the divinity between two of you are even stronger, or are more, like let's say to teach groups, are even stronger, that the answers come through and the old ways start to become obsolete through practice. Okay? I'm going to end with Buckminster Fuller's quote, you know, you will never change the world by fighting against things you don't want. Find a new way that makes the old way obsolete, and then people will follow the new way and the old way collapses. Your creation and your divinity allow old ways that are not serving us and our own humanity, the divergence of moving into the spiral of good and evil in that battle, and it allows that to collapse. So the privilege of being a creative changes the fabric of our reality. And when the human kind of ego and fear gets in the way, we veil that divinity. And that divinity is that thing that transcends. Divinity, in its definition, is a transcendence of human limitations. And when we transcend the human limitations, we start to find new ways that make the old ways that are not serving us and the collective obsolete. So, I want you to celebrate your ability to be a creative, because it truly is a gift to yourself and the world, truly on a deep level that sometimes we don't necessarily recognize. And we can have that attitude of gratitude of every day, knowing what a privilege it really is to be able to sit here and do what we love, you know, because not everyone has that privilege. And when we tune into that privilege, then we can help the collective, right? Our actions come from that new place that makes the old way obsolete. And it comes from that very unique pathway that is only unique to you. So if you want to continue to have longevity in the creation of your own life, in the manifestation of your own life, let me know, because that's what we do with our clients. We help our clients stay in a container, a sacred container, where we can see the survival mode in play, where you can see the soul mode in play, and we can continue to learn how to trust the soul's calling and base our tasks based on our top values and goals. And little by little, we will strategically build the life of our dreams. And what happens when you work in conjunction with somebody else is that the things that we start to think are impossible start to become possible, because we have a mirror. We have somebody who kind of holds us accountable and kind of moves us through when the veil of fear starts to take over. That's the power. And we start to collapse time, right? So something that might take you 10 years can take you 1 year or 6 months, because you have this very focused container that keeps you in that healing place to move you through what you need to move through, and then keeps you in the action oriented place, a tasks completion place, to actually have, to make, what you want real, right? Because we all know we can visualize our way through life, but we have to actually take the next obvious action, and that's what we work with our clients. What is the next most obvious action, spiritually, energetically, and in your life goals and your financial goals, your business goals, your entrepreneurial goals, your coaching, healing goals? So if that's something that you want and you need help with, and you have this deep calling, this deep mission, and you want somebody to collaborate with you so that comes into fruition, then DM me. Let me know, Jamie, I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. And on that call, we will look at the top 3 things that are imprinted in your body, mind, and energy that starts to shift you out of your core wounds, because that's the step number 1, the lever that will kind of help all other levers become either obsolete or more easier for you to continue to move forward in the life of your dreams. And I know myself, it's super powerful to have somebody be accountable to. I have my own mentors and coaches, and without them, I can definitely do what I do, but we don't heal alone. And we start to see past our limitations, and we transcend our human limitations, and we transcend into the soul's calling. So if that sounds like something that you want, then DM me. Let me know I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. Katie will put my calendar link in the comments as well. And I will see you all next week, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here in this group, The Discipline of Business and Yoga, which I will be changing the name soon. So stay tuned for that. Bye, guys. See you next week.